Hey everybody, and welcome to the next commercial breakdown. So this one is going to be on a spot I did for KFC pickles, and it was a fun one. It had the unicorn of time, which we don't usually have. So I had 2 weeks for this one and got to craft something interesting. So I'm going to play it down and we'll go from there. So the brief for this one was the product had to be submerged in water, but still appetizing and not being affected by the water. So that was interesting to say the least. So in order to get that, I asked for specific things when they shot. So they shot lots of these elements with lots of things that I suggested. So there was caustics, and we'll go into that and show why and how we did that. But yeah, this was a fun one because it was being able to craft something that, this job might be a job that would have gone to After Effects or something like that, but it stayed in Flame, and it was actually a pleasure to work with in Flame. So the first thing I did when I made this in Flame was I made everything at 4096 by 4096. So I create color source, I'm gonna pull it out, create batch effects, and that's how this is all created. So if I drop this in now and alt click on this, you see it's 4096 by 4096. So that's the important thing, is to create the batch effects when you do that, because if you don't do that, it won't be a 4096 by 4096. So to give an example, I'm gonna do a new, color source, 4096 by 4096, and drop it in. And if we do zoom in on it, and we alt click, you see it defaults to 1920 by 1080 because it's always defaulted to timeline resolution. So that will also happen if we did the same thing. So new sequence at 4096 by 4096, create, and then open color source 4096 by 4096, right? So if we drop that in, it will still promote it back to 1920 by 1080, and that's just how it is. So again, the workaround is to create that as a batch effects and get it out of the way, and it's done. So these were cool because again, we had time and it was actually a cool spot that ended up being done. So if we jump through, you can see like everything is kind of like participating in the water. And I'll home it up. You can see it's like doing its thing. There's a cool wipe as it goes past. That has like a ripple as it goes down. And again, it's a cool spot. So, and again, we had the unicorn of time, which never happens. So let's just jump into, say, this one, for instance, and we can take a look at what went into it. Spacebar F. Just framing it all up. Okay, so that's the extent of what went into it. And you can see that like everything was built at 4096 by 4096. So that way I didn't have to worry about socials, and it was easy, and it was just like a quick repo if I had to do anything. And we look through and you can see like some of the elements, and we'll scrub through. You can see, so we had some pickles floating, some slices of pickles floating, some dill floating. The Pepsi had like an element on top that was just added. If we look at it, once it thinks, hopefully it doesn't crash. He's really thinking. These were chunkier setups, but not this chunky. So I think it might be to do with that I'm recording. So let's give it a second. Okay, it automatically thought. So if we jump through, you can see I pre-rendered a bunch of stuff. So you can see this one, which was a pickle with caustics built in. So if I open that, go into the BFX. So everything had this little kind of a platter that would then do caustics for real on the elements. So again, like you can see, it was just water with like a light hitting it, and then that light that was hitting it was like introducing some cool caustics that would have been very hard to put in post. Not impossible, but just would have been like problematic. So again, that's our caustics that we get for free because they shot it like this, which was great. And this applied to pretty much every element that we did in this. So if I'm going to jump out, and again, there's our Pepsi if we look at it. And then this one had some light wrap material. So again, it's just very subtle. You can see it's just like doing a little bit of light wrap just around the edges there. And it just did exactly what was needed in this case. So again, if we zoom out on this one and then go to another one, you can see there was other elements that were put in and did their purpose. And again, if we alt double click, look at what was being fed in and jump in, you can see what I asked for, which was this guy here, which I think I ended up keying in just like the flame keyer. I tried Samiroto, but it just like did not work well. So let's see what happened. Open BFX. And yeah, you can see I used the GMask keyer in this case, which was the tracer keyer. And this did exactly what I wanted it. So we're gonna jump through. I actually, yeah, this is the output from Samiroto, so I actually screened these together. So again, I used a combination of the tracer and that. And like you guys know, sometimes the Samiroto is great, and sometimes it just doesn't work. So again, the biggest thing was creating the environment. So they wanted to feel like it was in the world, floating, but not one not fake and one not interacting. So it was a very tricky balance of what the world was participating in. So if we look to some of the elements, so that was one of the elements that we added up the top. And this one was to add that surface part that felt like it was above, but like refracting, and gave reason for the caustics that were happening. So again, if we all double click and go up here, so this is just using an element, and I'll push play. So this is just some shot footage that exists on our library of footage, which is great. It was time warped, and then if we look here, that was what was tapered off in the matte. I grabbed the colors from everything to kind of like cement everything together, and then that was some lens blur to help it like mush in, and then it was multiplied by the background. So again, this element, and because this was created at 4096 by 4096, everything was then grabbed from that. So it was really easy. We didn't have to worry about aspect ratios because the 4096 by 4096 is 1 pixel aspect ratio, and it was just easy to copy paste and then retrofit other things I've already created. So I'm going to jump out. Again, this is like a heavier setup. It shouldn't be, but you know how flame is. So I'll let it think for a second. Okay, undo. Okay, stop thinking. So again, then we go from this. This is one of them, but once it stops thinking, it chugs for whatever reason. It should not chug because they're really not that intense. Okay, so we jump through. Let's go into the wipe. So once this updates, it's really chugging. Okay, so this is the end frame. So it's got all the new items that they're trying to feature. So pickle chips, pickle Pepsi, pickle sandwich, loaded fries, and you see first thing is the pickle wipe. So let's go in there and have a look. So the pickle wipe is, if I open this and then go in there. So this is just a pickle that's like floating. So you can see this is what the element was essentially. It was 4096 by 2160. I'm gonna frame it up and you can see what that element did. Again, it was shown on blue. It had this guy. And for this, I use Sammy. Let me show you. I'm gonna open that. BFX editor. Oh no, actually this one I used the Keyer 3D and a GMass tracer. So this was the extent of what was used. So again, that's just a Keyer 3D, a D-spill, and that was using the AFX D-spill, and then a mult. And you can see that was the element that was used. And then we jump out. And then that was blown up. Again, this is all still referencing the source res, so 4096 by 2160 in this case, not 4096 by 4096 like all the other elements. And this was scaled to, if we go back to BFX, and again, I have a displacement map that is being fed by this guy, which I offset the front and the back by 7 frames forward and 7 frames back based on the element. And again, this displacement, if we look at it, I'm gonna undo the cache, so alt click. You can see it gives it a little bit of distortion once this updates. It might be chunky for whatever reason. It shouldn't be, but we'll let it think. So it's thinking and it's doing the distortion based off the back clip, which is correct. So we'll let it think. And then it's being comped with the pickle on top. So I'm going to jump out, undo. It's thinking. You can see we have a little bit of a ripple as it goes in. Again, anything past 10 layers in action just kind of like craps itself for whatever reason, but that's just how it is. So I'm gonna let that think. Undo. You can see this was the, what's that object? It really does not like me moving anything. So I'm gonna let it think. Undo, jump to the top, shouldn't have moved that, so give it a second. Undo. Okay, so if we scrub through, you can see this was the final like hero one. Again, it's all based off the same setup. All I did was change the position of the water ripples. So like where it was in space, it was just like adjusting to where it made sense with where the lighting was and what I wanted it to do. So if we go into the final pickle one, and we'll go in. Jump to the side, so I'm swiping and it's thinking. Okay, and space F. There's motion vectors, which, so I had to pre-render all these, and I actually wouldn't have to do that, but for whatever reason, even when it was a BFX rendered and then like piped into the pipeline, I would still get pixel errors that would not let me render it through. So that's the main reason I then would add a render node like you've seen here. So the only reason I added that render node is because for whatever reason, it like freaked out. And I don't know why, but that's just something to keep in mind. So again, everything was like, again, it's the same setup. Space F. Give it a second. Thinking. So all these actions were just the positional values because it was very hard to match these to the offline because lots of layers came in that were just ended up being matched, which was not fun. So again, everything is using the same setup at 4096 by 4096. It's using the same element, the sparkle water element that was an actual water element that we used. And then if we look into the main comp, give it a second. Now it's freaking out for whatever reason. But usually it comes back. Is it going to come back? No. Okay, so then the next step was, I used Sparks for this. So this was edge rays. So this was add the dynamic lighting that kind of helped bed it all in. If we look through, you can see it's just like a nice like light flicker that's happening. And then a G mask to isolate like where that happens. Again, I'm just scrubbing through. Screen that. So this is funny because this is the reason I pre-rendered it. The cache write failed OpenP cache for writing. So again, that's the whole reason I pre-rendered this, but it's not working. So after that, there was a water highlight hit, which was this. And then this, and if I scrub through, you can see it really should not be this slow, but you know, it's flame. Okay, and then this, oh, now it's working because, okay. So again, everything's getting then warped in here by, if I jump to the thing, that's just an extra element that's like adding some highlights. If I go in here, it's screened in at 75. I'm going to toggle it on and off. You can see it's just adding some extra little niceties to it, everything. Everything then had an extra air glow. So again, F1, F4. You can see it's doing like some cool stuff. A lens blur. Just, again, very subtle. That's the what's being blurred. That's our Z mask or whatever. And then some grading stuff. So again, that's our little element of light peeking through. And I use Croc Grunge for that. So you can see, again, this is chugging when it shouldn't because this is a very beefy system. But anyway. Shift Escape to bring back schematic. It's really chugging, apparently. Okay. And then there was some extra grading happening, which was this, the inverse of that, which helped kind of frame up what you're looking at, like you can see. So F1, F4, F1, F4. Another extra grade to put it in the world that they wanted. So again, that was just tweaking some colors to make it not too green. A nice little chroma warp, which I always like to add. It just really like cements everything you do from an effects world. It just makes everything easier. So we'll let that jump out, undo. It's thinking. So again, if we jump to the pickle one here, let's go to the top. I used another matchbox, which is actually very underrated, but like very useful again for underwater stuff, which was water turbulence. So these are my settings. So complexity 10, speed 0.5. I press play. You can see what it's doing. Again, it's like a very generic kind of texture, but in the real world, if I jump to this one, it's thinking, again, I've like isolated that to where I wanted it, and then I've piped that through a master grade, and that's just adding some extra lighting interactions, which would be very hard to add outside of that. So I'm going to exit and then press play. For that clip, you can see what it did. For whatever reason, it's like not liking playing. Give it a second. Yeah, it's frozen up. So if I can stress anything, it's to always, if you're going to build something that's like built on being able to farm out across multiple ratios, create it in the largest format possible. So again, 4096 by 4096 in a sequence as 4096, add a color source, create a batch effects, drop that into your timeline, and you're going to have a good time because you don't have to worry about the aspect ratio freaking out. You don't have to worry about stuff jumping. It's just so much simpler than it usually would be. So in this case, again, I'm frozen because Flame just doesn't like playing back something for whatever reason, which you all know. But again, this one was cool because it was a chance to really explore look dev, which we don't usually get a chance to do in Flame. So I was very, very happy and excited to be able to do that in Flame. And the creatives I worked on with like for this were like, again, like great creatives. So it just made the whole process better. So when we had our first whip in-person showing, everything was further along than they expected, and the rest was just kind of tweaking and finesse, which is what we always want to do. So again, let's see if this plays down. It's not going to play down. Okay, so that's going to be it for this one, guys. I hope this was helpful, and stay tuned for more.